Hey guys, hope you enjoy and have any thoughts comment. Today we are going to learn ninjutsu. Naruto huffed, rolling his eyes. This is bullying, he said without heat. You and Guy Sensei are ganging up on me. I don't think trying to teach you techniques that will make you a stronger and more effective shinobi counts as bullying, Kakashi smiled. Long used to Naruto's opinions. some adjusting and he'd had to forego the rooftops. But he was almost there. "Do you need any help?" Naruto scowled as he continued walking. People were supposed to be asleep. Not out here bothering him. "Here. I can help." Naruto was forced to stop as a boy stepped in front of him. He placed the cabinet on the ground as he glared at the obstacle in his path. He was taller than Naruto by a fair bit. With long black hair tied back into a braid. A short tan kimono was wrapped around him and round. Dark eyes looked back at him eagerly. He couldn't have been much older than Naruto and he could see signs of training, an academy student then. "No," he said shortly. Hoping the boy would pick up the hint. "Oh," his expression dropped a bit. Naruto took that as his cue to leave and grabbed the cabinet. He didn't even have the chance to pick it up when a chunk of wood fell off, causing him to lose his grip on the whole thing. It clattered to the ground and dislodged the two dodgy shelves. Naruto had to take a minute to breathe, yelling swears might wake the rest of the village up. "Are you sure you don't need help? Shouldn't you be training or something rather than hanging about here bothering me?" he snapped. The boy actually took a step back before he looked away. "I'm not going to pass anyway," he said quietly, and Naruto rolled his eyes. "That sounds like a you problem," he retorted. "Go and train or something instead of moping about it." "You don't understand," the boy cried. "I can't use chakra, I'll never pass the exam." Naruto resisted the urge to face palm. "You were never going to pass anyway with that shitty attitude," he snapped. "Patience wearing thin. The only thing stopping you from passing is you. So you need to take your finger out of your ass and figure it out. So what if you don't have chakra? That ain't no reason to give up, learn weapons or taijutsu or something that doesn't use chakra. Fuck's sake." He scooped up the fallen pieces of wood and grabbed the cabinet with his other arm. Annoyance and the urge to get far away from this moping idiot fueling his strength. Naruto had to work 3 times harder than everyone else, but he did it. He graduated and showed everyone who didn't think he could do it where to shove it. This boy probably didn't even having people trying to sabotage him, and he wanted to complain about how hard it was. He stomped down the street, completely missing the way the other boys' eyes followed him with wonder. Sasuke sat in the training ground, legs crossed and chin propped up on one hand. He was supposed to be training, but the puzzle that was one Uzumaki Naruto was occupying too much of his thoughts for him to concentrate. He hadn't anticipated much resistance when he'd started his investigation. Since he'd lost his family, everyone in the village had fallen over themselves to offer what empty promises and pointless assistance they thought would get them into his good books. He'd never accepted any of it. None of it would change what happened, and Sasuke knew that they didn't really do it for him. Anyone who would have survived attack would have probably gotten the same treatment. No one cared about Sasuke, they only cared about the Uchiha. That was why it had been almost refreshing to encounter someone like Naruto. He looked at him and saw Sasuke. It was infuriating in equal measures as the other boy refused to take him seriously. Naruto had a way of getting under his skin in a way no one else in the village had, and they'd only met a few times. They would probably end up fighting when Sasuke tracked him down again, but that only made him want to find him faster. No one brushed off Sasuke. So he'd begun his quest to find out more about the blonde, and had almost immediately encountered a wall. No one would talk, and Sasuke knew for a damn fact that they knew what he was talking about. It was like no one wanted to acknowledge Naruto existed, but Sasuke had seen the way they would talk about him when they thought he had left the vicinity. They knew who Naruto was, and what's more, they hated him. Sasuke had then started just eavesdropping, since asking them directly was getting him nowhere. Demon was the most common insult, although Sasuke heard plenty more. The venom with which the villagers talked about the boy was startling, and yet not a single one had outright said the reason why they all hated him. He'd found out about some of the pranks the blonde had played, but that shouldn't have been enough to prompt this level of anger. The shinobi population were a lot more ambivalent, but Sasuke suspected they knew he was there, so who knows what they actually thought. He had managed to find out that he was apprenticed to some jounin named Mato guy. Sasuke had never heard of him, but he did know how weird it was for a newly graduated genin to get apprenticed rather than put into the usual team of 3. The genin from his graduating class were more than happy to tell Sasuke about how Naruto had been the dead last and terrible at anything chakra related. When he'd pressed to find out how he'd passed, they'd suddenly clammed up. Apparently saying anything remotely positive about Naruto was too much for them to handle. Sasuke scoffed and rose to his feet. brushing off his pants. He'd only managed to find more questions than answers about the genin. He understood the comment he'd made about knowing what it was like to be gossiped about a lot better, but Sasuke still didn't know why the village talked about Naruto like that. He couldn't think of anything Naruto could do to make a whole village turn against him so strongly. It didn't seem fair. He still wanted to fight the other boy. Whatever the villager wanted to think wasn't Sasuke's problem. Someone who graduated early was exactly the sort of rival Sasuke needed to get stronger. Itachi was still out there and he was only falling further behind. The academy didn't challenge him, but he knew Naruto would. He had one mission in life, and that was to kill his brother. He didn't care what it took to get there. He would find Naruto again and make him fight so Sasuke could get stronger. He had to get stronger. Guy stood next to his student before the Hokage, trying not to give away his excitement to his observant apprentice. Naruto would be delighted, and Guy knew he was ready. His genin had truly blossomed since his graduation and his youth was shining bright. "We're just waiting on the other team," the Hokage said calmly, shuffling scrolls on his desk. So maybe Naruto would not be delighted. But the prospect of leaving the village should outweigh his feelings about this genin team. It was agreed between himself, the Hokage and the other Jounin sensei, that this would be good for all their students. Konoha was not a place where animosity could exist between fellow shinobi. This mission may help to break down the barriers between Naruto and his former classmates. His student had to be prepared to work with anyone, and the same applied for the other genin. That was what made the will of fire so strong. "Sorry for keeping you waiting, Hokage-sama," a voice spoke up from the door behind them, and Guy turned to smile brightly at Hayama. He watched the other Jounin shuffled his three genin into a line next to them, and he could physically feel Naruto tense up at his side. He resisted the urge to clap his genin on his shoulder in comfort. He also could not help but note that the three genin looked as unhappy at this as his own. "Now we are all here. We can get started," the Hokage announced, handing a scroll over to Hayama. "This is your first C rank for both teams, so in the interest of safety, we are combining your teams for this mission. I understand there has been some tension between your teams in the past, but that is irrelevant now. You are shinobi of Konoha, and I expect you to uphold that standard. Do you understand?" There was a chorus of yes. Hokage-sama from Team 5, but Naruto just nodded. "You are to deliver that letter to the Daimo's palace," the Sandaime continued. "It is a standard delivery mission. Hand it to a member of the administrative team at the palace and return with their reply. There is no truly sensitive information enclosed. However, if you are ambushed and feel that you cannot defend it, destroy the letter. I do not expect you to run into this problem on a C rank." Guy nodded at the underlying message. "Your sensei will report on your conduct and efficiency during this mission," the Hokage added with a stern glint in his dark eyes. "How this mission goes will weigh heavily in future assignments." There was a weighted silence before the man sat back in his chair. "You are free to go." Guy bowed and left the office, Naruto trailing close behind. The minute the door shut, Naruto turned to him, arms crossed and expression sour. "Is he serious?" Before Guy could reply, one of the other genin spoke up. "If you can't control yourself, then maybe you should stay in the village," the taller male genin said snidely. "Like you're ready." "Kichi team," Naruto smirked with a cruel twist Guy had never seen from his student. "Last I recall you pissed yourself when you thought you were under attack." The other genin turned a shade of purple, but before they could continue, Hayama stepped in. "Kichiro, that's enough. This is exactly what cannot happen when we leave the village," he said sternly. "Ren, Midori, I also expect better of you. You are shinobi of Konoha and need to act like it whoever you're working with." Guy grinned brightly. "I could not have said it better myself. Hayama-kun," he proclaimed cheerfully, patting Naruto heavily on the back. "This is a wonderful opportunity for the genin to allow the springtime of their youth to blossom for all the world to see. The bonds between comrades will strengthen and the will of fire will burn brighter than ever. If you say so." "Guy," Hayama grinned weakly back at him. "Should we meet at the front gate in an hour?" Guy threw double thumbs up in response, and Team 5 left, leaving Guy with his apprentice. "You finally get to leave the village, Naruto-kun. You can see the world," Guy pointed out brightly. And the tension in Naruto's shoulder that had been present since they saw Team 5 finally started to dissipate. Yeah, I guess I do. It was not quite a smile, but Guy knew by now how to read his apprentice. So gate in 30. We have an hour. Naruto-kun. I am not taking the chance that they'll leave without us and say we were late, Naruto scoffed. Starting to walk down the hall. I'll work with them. Guy-sensei. But Jiji didn't say I had to trust them. Guy followed after his student. Naruto's youth really was blossoming wonderfully. 6 months ago he would not have even considered working with Team 5. He was making progress and Guy could barely keep himself from telling the whole village how proud he was. His student was ready for this. Naruto bounced along the road. The looming walls of the capital inching closer with every step. It had been an uneventful journey so far and his former classmates were just as happy to avoid him as he was them. Naruto opted to take up a position at the back of their formation and he hadn't allowed them out of his sight. They were probably scheming something, and while he had faith in his ability to deal with whatever feeble attempt they may make, he was outnumbered. He didn't like being outnumbered. He'd handled his own meals and had refused the offer from their Jounin sensei to join them for dinner. Guy had tried to encourage him, but Naruto had managed to get away by offering to take the first watch. He hadn't exactly slept when the other genin had been on watch, but he had never needed much sleep. One of the perks of the damn fox, he supposed. The most important thing was that he was out of the village. He breathed in deeply. Somehow the air felt different here. Better. Fresher. He didn't have to keep watch for disgruntled civilians. The people they had seen on their journey here had looked at them but not at him. No one cared who he was out here. He had imagining what the world was like outside of Konoha almost his whole life, and he had to say that it was better than he imagined, mainly because he hadn't really had a reference to imagine from, but still. This was great. Not even Team 5 could ruin this for him. The walls of the capital loomed ever closer and Naruto let his eyes trail over the high stone walls. He could see what must be the palace peeking over the top of it in the distance somewhere. The trees on either side of the road that led to the city gates had started to thin out but were still thick enough that Naruto sometimes felt like they should have been named the Land of Trees rather than the Land of Fire. Traffic had picked up and civilians bustled around them. Some alone. Some with a group and a lot with various animals. They finally reached the gates and Naruto hung back as Guy and Hayama spoke to the guards. He threw a filthy look at Kichi team as the other genin muttered, "I'll be surprised if they let the demon in." They were all ushered in soon enough and Naruto coughed as a wall of unfamiliar smells slammed into his sensitive nose. Some were familiar. He'd encountered them at the markets back in Konoha. But there were many that weren't. There were a lot more people and stands and color and noise and Naruto just stood there, taking it all in. This was amazing. He knew there was more out there, but to be confronted with it? To realize just how much there could be. He never wanted to go back. If this place was the school, then what would he see if he actually left the country? Not only that, but no one knew who he was. Not a single person in the street in front of them turned to look in their direction. As they started to walk further into the city, the people that did catch his eye didn't give him a second glance. Was this what it was like to be normal? Did other kids his age get to feel like this all the time? I miss Konoha already, Ren muttered beneath his breath. There are way too many people here. Yeah. It feels like it would be so easy to get lost here, Midori added quietly. Naruto threw them an incredulous look. That was the best part. He turned to Guy and smiled wide. Genuine in a way that he hadn't felt in years. Thank for this mission. Guy-sensei, he beamed. His blue eyes were immediately drawn back to the bustling crowd, so he missed Guy's look of surprise. No problem. Naruto-kun. His teacher clapped him on the shoulder. It is wonderful to see your youth shine so brightly in a new place. Naruto was so busy taking in his surroundings he didn't acknowledge his sensei's words. He also ignored Team 5's unimpressed looks in his direction. They'd walked a far bit into the city, heading in the direction of the massive palace in the distance when Naruto's sensitive ears picked up a commotion. He wandered off in that direction until he found the source. He frowned as he spotted 3 teenagers hassling an elderly vendor. The crowd around them was happy to just walk by and ignore the situation. At least this was familiar. There had been many a time that the villagers of Konoha would look away from his own mistreatment. Oftentimes at the hands of people that looked exactly like these boys. The sight boiled his blood and popped his happy bubble. People were still shit no matter where he was then. He couldn't stop himself from moving forward to stop one of the boy's fists from smashing more of the vendor's stuff. "What the fuck do you think you're doing?" the boy snarled. Dark eyes glaring down at Naruto. "It isn't your place to intervene. Do you know who I am?" Naruto hated that phrase. His place. Everyone seemed to be of the opinion that his fucking place was below theirs, and apparently there was nothing he could do about it. He personally thought they could shove that idea up their entitled asses. A shithead, he answered the boy's question and shoved him back, forcing the older teen to stumble. He crossed his arms as he glared at the trio. "Fuck off and leave the old man alone. Haven't you got anything better to do?" He was pretty sure they were civilians, so he wasn't allowed to do any real damage to them. But fortunately they were easy to scare. This is one of those times wearing his Hitaiate would have been handy. "Naruto-kun." Guy came around the corner and Naruto smirked at the trio of dickheads as they spotted the Hitaiate around his teacher's waist. He watched the leader debate within himself before taking the coward's route. "This isn't over," he snarled. "I am going to tell my father all about the abuse I suffered at the hands of Konoha Shinobi." He shoved his two accomplices back and they soon disappeared into the crowd. Guy walked over to join him with a big bushy eyebrow raised. Naruto feigned ignorance and turned back to the vendor, picking up his wares from where they had been scattered. "Thank you, young shinobi," the man smiled at him. "They like to cause trouble around this neighborhood. Their fathers are nobility, so there is little we can do about it. You have a kind heart." Naruto smiled weakly, unsure whether he should tell the man the real reason he came to help. It was more that he wanted to spite the bullies rather than help the victim. He would not be making a habit of helping strangers, he had too many problems of his own. "My wonderful apprentice has a heart of gold." Guy grinned brightly, holding out a thumbs up. "He is a wonderful example of youth and he is blooming majestically for the whole world to see." Naruto resisted the urge to facepalm. He translated that statement to know that Guy was happy with his actions. By why couldn't the Jounin ever just say things without using the word youth? "I am Arata Teiki," the vendor introduced himself, bowing his head. "I am Mato Guy, Konoha's sublime green beast of prey." His teacher posed proudly. "This is my young apprentice, Uzumaki Naruto." Naruto rolled his eyes and shoved the last of the stuff onto the table before hooking his teacher's elbow. "Come on, Guy-sensei. The daimyo is expecting us and Team 5 is totally going to ditch us later. Arata-san." He threw a half-hearted wave behind him, missing the man's reaction to the name Uzumaki. Naruto tried not to fidget as they waited for the daimyo to arrive. Guy kept looking at him with proud tears in his eyes and he wasn't sure how much longer he could take it. He had half a mind to go out and kick a puppy or something to make his teacher stop looking at him like that. "Welcome, Konoha," a man said as he entered from a side door, moving to take a seat on the daimyo's seat. "I believe you have something for me." Hayama stepped forward to hand over the letter. Head bowed. Naruto observed the leader of their country. He wasn't much. He was old like Jiji with small, hooded eyes and a thin mouth. The rest of his head was covered with a black cloth, with a white fan resting on top of his head pointing towards the ceiling. Naruto wondered how they stopped that from falling off. What if he bent over to pick something up? Did the daimyo even pick things up from the floor? His trail of thought had apparently caused him to miss the daimyo actually reading the letter. The man folded it up carefully. "Tell the Hokage." "I agree." Naruto blinked. Was that it? What was even the question? He hadn't expected anything too important since it was only a C-rank mission, but they came all the way here for just a yes? Naruto shrugged off those thoughts easily enough. Any reason to leave Konoha was a good reason in his book. He followed Hayama's and Guy's example and bowed low to the man, making their way back to door behind them. Apparently it was rude to turn your back on the daimyo. Naruto thought it was a dumb rule, but adults had loads of dumb rules. What was one more? The massive doors closed and they were lead to the entrance of the palace. "We'll head back tomorrow morning. But you have the afternoon to explore the city a bit," Hayama said. "I trust you to stay safe and make good decisions. I don't want any incidents." For some reason he looked directly at Naruto when he said that. "The capital should be relatively safe for you, but keep an eye out anyway. I expect you back at these gates at sundown." "Okay." Team 5 chorused their understanding while Naruto looked Guy. His Jounin sensei gave him a thumbs up. You have earned this. Naruto-kun. He grinned. Enjoy the full potential of your youth and live with no regrets. Naruto rolled his eyes but couldn't help the fond smile as he turned away from his sensei to head into the city. Team 5 walked along with them and Naruto resisted the urge to fuck off. He could stand their presence until they were out of Guy's sight. He could do this for Guy. Hey. Why is your Jounin sensei so fucking trashy? They had just turned out of sight of their teachers and Kichi team opens his big fucking mouth. What the fuck are you talking about? Naruto narrows his eyes. I mean. I knew your Jounin sensei had to be garbage, sneered the older boy. Why else would they give him you after all? But seriously? Is he sick in the head or something? Guy sensei is one of the best Jounin in the whole village, Naruto hissed venomously. Yeah. But that spandex? The haircut? The whole spiels about youth. There is something wrong with him, Ren added gleefully. He's perfect for you. No other student could stand him long enough to learn anything. Naruto stopped. Feeling his nails dig into his palms. He could take them talking shit about him, well. Maybe not take it? As he had proven before with his pranks, but he knew how to deal with it. It was expected. He had not expected them to go after Guy sensei. Guy didn't deserve for people to talk shit about him. He liked Naruto. He was proud of Naruto. He didn't try to change him or get at him for being a little brat, he just accepted him. No one had ever done that before. You really think that putting people down is going to get you anywhere, he said quietly. Drawing the attention of the genin. He continued before Kichi team could interrupt him. You really think you're going to be anything? He glared at them. The words spilling past his lips like poison. Yeah. I am the demon brat. But guess what? I fucking matter, he took a step forward. I am going to be remembered. I am going to be someone. Not because things were handed to me but because I grabbed them with my own two hands. I am going to build my future into one that I can be proud of. What the fuck are you going to be? None of you are going to make it past Chunin. The best you can hope for is to become one of the hundreds of faceless Chunins. And either die for the village or fade into obscurity. His volume rose. You don't even work hard. You will never be Jounin because that would mean stepping outside your fucking comfort zone. You are going to go through the rest of your life being only good enough. You are never going to matter. You are going to live your little lives and pass from this world with nothing more than a whimper. He hadn't noticed when he'd stepped into their faces. He didn't notice how pale they had become. All he could feel was the indignation. The rage. So yeah. You can make fun of me. You can make fun of Guy sensei. You can feel really fucking good about yourselves because that is only for right now. You know. Deep fucking down. That I am going to leave you and the rest of our godforsaken class in the fucking dirt. You know that we were never the fucking same. I was born to be great and you were born to be my fucking backstory. He turned on his heel. Unable to look at their faces for a second longer. He stomped his way through the city street. The crowd parting for him. He didn't even know where he was going. Just away from them. Why did it have to be so hard just to be himself? Why couldn't people just leave him alone? All he wanted was to just live without people feeling like they had to shit on him to make themselves feel good. Why was that so hard? You're the Uzumaki. He stopped short as he looked up from the road to see the vendor from earlier that day. Arata-san. The man's green eyes sparkled as he ushered Naruto to follow him. Naruto was too surprised to anything but follow. I have been waiting around the daimyo's residence for you, the man said. His cane clacking against the stone below them. I couldn't allow you to leave the capital without speaking to you first. Arata-san. You don't have to. I didn't really help you, Naruto tried to tell him but the old man wasn't having it. Hush now, child. And just follow me. You are an Uzumaki. Correct. Which parent? My mom. Naruto answered hesitantly. Excellent. Excellent, Arata said as they finally came back to his stall. I have something that belongs to you. Naruto had no idea what this man was talking about. He didn't lose anything in the capital for it to be returned to him. His green backpack had been firmly closed the entire time he's been in the city. Many years ago. Shortly after the fall of Uzushio I met a man named Uzumaki Ashina. He said he was named for a past Uzukage. He was wounded and I took him in. Helped him heal and hid him from the like of Kumo and Iwa, his eyes grew soft. I fell very much in love with him and he with me. We couldn't continue the clan line and he died almost 10 years ago now. He left me these and I promised that I would pass them on to the next Uzumaki I met. He was not optimistic. Believing his clan to be gone. He finally hauled a duffel bag from the cart behind his stall and dumped it on the table. Gesturing for Naruto to come look. Naruto walked forward slowly. Spotting a couple of swords and some scrolls. Arata picked up one and offered it to him. They were masters of Fuinjutsu. You know. Place a drop of your blood onto that seal there. Naruto just looked at the man incredulously before playing along. There was no fucking way. He bit his finger and watched the blood fall onto the seal. There was a burst of light before the thing unfurled. Revealing different Kenjutsu katas. You really are an Uzumaki, Arata whispered with tears in his eyes. Take it all. It is yours. Arata-san. I can't. You will. These are heirlooms of the Uzumaki clan. They need to be with a member of that clan, he smiled sadly. I believe our meeting today was fate, maybe it was my Ashina allowing me to fulfill my promise or the gods themselves. But you were meant to have these. Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto struggled for words. He'd never had an heirloom before. He wasn't allowed any of his parents' stuff since it was a big secret and all. He belonged to a clan. A real clan. One he'd resigned himself to having lost before he was even born. Thank you. Arata-san, he bowed in a rare moment of complete sincerity. I will treasure these for the rest of my life. Sasuke stomped into the training ground. His target sitting innocently in the middle reading scrolls. Wearing that obnoxious orange. It was a wonder Sasuke had taken so long to find him. You. Naruto looked up and he rolled his eyes. Rolled his eyes at Sasuke. As if he was the problem. Where the fuck have you been? What do you mean where have I been? Naruto lowered his scroll. Why were you even looking? You are going to be my training partner, Sasuke stated. Pointing right into the dope's stupid face. Oh man. This again. Naruto fell back into the grass. Sasuke scowled and Wakso was standing directly above him. You have to train with me, he restated. Holding eye contact with the genin. Teach me how to walk up walls. Why me? Naruto raised a blonde eyebrow up at him. I am literally the last choice for pretty much every person in this village. Everyone else is dumb, Sasuke said firmly. And this caused Naruto to sit up. The blonde stared at him for a long moment before patting the grass beside him. Sasuke sat down gracefully. Crossing his arms. You graduated 3 years early. You are the only person my age who could probably keep up with me. I'm the only person your age who could beat you is what you mean, Naruto grinned. Sasuke just glared at him. Naruto sighed heavily. Fine. But I have conditions. HN. You can get into place I can't, he began. You can also get the good prices. So you're going to buy my groceries and weapons. I'll give you the money. I'm not going to be your fucking errand boy. Naruto held up a hand. I would do it myself but it costs like double and they're starting to catch onto my henge. That didn't make any sense to Sasuke but the blonde continued before he could ask. Also I want to make it clear that we are not friends. Got it? So if a guy with silver hair or one in green spandex asks. We don't know each other. Got it? They absolutely cannot find out about this. They would never let me live it down. Sasuke scoffed. He didn't need friends and it wasn't like he was going to be admitting to training with Naruto with anyone. If anything, Naruto should be the one bragging. This is a business arrangement at most. You don't have seniority on me so demanding isn't going to do shit. Just ask like a normal human being cause if you come in ordering me. Odds are I am going to do the opposite. I can walk away at any time so demanding ain't going to do shit. Got it? Sasuke rolled his eyes but nodded. He would take it. Getting stronger was the only thing that mattered and if he had to put up with this blonde idiot to do it, he would. He blinked at the outstretched hand, taking it after a moment. Looks like we have a deal. Partner, Naruto grinned and Sasuke rolled his eyes even harder. This better be worth it. Naruto breathed in the biting night air, watching the lanterns rise above the village into the night sky. The end of another year, it was a pretty good year he would say. He graduated from the academy. Met Guy-sensei. Left the village for the first time. Even Kakashi and Sasuke weren't so bad. He pulled the black duffel closer. He had spent many nights just looking at his family's swords, trying to imagine his relatives swinging them around. He wanted to learn. He had the katas. But something made him hesitate. He wanted to do it right, he wanted to honor his family. He didn't want to screw this up. He already had so little from his ancestors. Kenjutsu would work so well with his bloodline limit. He had mentioned the swords to Guy when they'd met back up in the capital. The man had said that the blooming of his youth had been rewarded. Naruto had just rolled his eyes. He would talk to Guy tomorrow about starting sword training. This was a new year, one step closer to his goals. He'd had a taste of freedom and was more determined than ever to make it more permanent. He had a lot to do this year. Naruto ran across the rooftops of Konoha, feeling as though he was flying. This was his favorite time of day. Early morning. The village hadn't quite woken up yet. So it was just him, the crisp morning air and the occasional shinobi. He slid down the slope of a roof, leaping to the next with a wide grin on his face. It had been 2 years since he had been apprenticed to Guy and his life had started to change for the better. He still didn't have a great relationship with the village and he was as determined as ever to leave. But he liked the life he had built at present. He didn't even have to talk to the civilians with the way things were now. Sasuke was still very reluctantly getting his groceries for him, making sure to voice his displeasure at the task every single time. And Naruto pretty much lived on the rooftops at this point. He could barely remember the last time he'd had to walk through the streets themselves without Guy accompanying him. They hadn't tried to force a team on him yet either. He was aware he would need one to be allowed to participate in the Chunin exams. But Guy had insisted he wait and build his skills first. Naruto wasn't thrilled about the delay, but he knew there were teams that would need an extra body to attend the exams this year. This was going to be his year. He could feel it. He was already pretty much a Chunin anyway. He was on exclusively C-rank missions, and while he only rarely got to leave the village, it was worlds better than the D ranks. He knew the village and the surrounding lands like the back of his hand at this point with how many patrols he had done. He had even managed to avoid doing too many D ranks. He'd had maybe 5 in the past year and it had been totally worth it. He wasn't about to let people talk shit about Guy. It gave him time to work on his kenjutsu. He had started working with his clan's swords last January and he felt like he had a pretty good handle on them now. He still had a long way to go, but they no longer felt wrong in his hands. He'd read that the best swordsmen always said their weapon felt like an extension of their arm rather than something they wield in their hand. He had also discovered that the swords were meant to be used as a duo. That was a steep learning curve. Learning to use one was enough of a challenge, but he was determined to master the style. He owed to his clan. His taijutsu and physical conditioning had come a long way too, but that was no surprise with Guy as a teacher. Kakashi had given him a couple more ninjutsu, but it still wasn't Naruto's favorite speciality. He had been trying to talk the Jounin into teaching him ninjutsu he could use with his swords. The man had insisted that he learned how to use the swords first. Naruto was forced to agree after he managed to slice open his own leg during practice. His bloodline limit hadn't evolved very much, but Kakashi said that it would grow with him. Naruto knew that his eyes were only as useful as the rest of his skills, so he tried not to bother himself about his lack of progress. Another development over the past year was Sasuke. He had kept up his end of the deal and had taught the Uchiha how to tree walk. To Naruto's annoyance, the academy student had picked it up a lot quicker than he had. He felt a little better after showing him water walking, something about Sasuke looking like a drowned, disgruntled cat was enough to make him smile. He had also managed to learn some things from the Uchiha which he hadn't expected. The Uchiha taijutsu style was very interesting and very different than what he was learning from Guy. He hopped off the edge of a building, landing lightly onto the dirt beneath him. Guy had said to meet him at the Hokage's office, and he hoped it was for the reason he was thinking. He was overdue to go to the Chunin exams. Guy hadn't changed in the slightest in the last year, and Naruto liked that about him. He was still in the same outfit. Still making dumb poses. Still yelling at the top of his lungs about the power of youth. Still challenging himself in the weirdest ways. Naruto honestly thought he was the best Jounin sensei in Konoha. The man still tried to talk Naruto into matching his outfit though, and he was not having that. He may adore his teacher, but he could also acknowledge that he was a super fucking weirdo. He says that in the fondest way possible, only he and Kakashi were allowed to say that about Guy too. He will and has fought people that have insulted his teacher's quirks. He still hadn't been able to figure out Guy and Kakashi's whole rivalry thing. He'd had front row seats to most of their challenges and some of them couldn't even be qualified as challenges as far as he could see. They were keeping score, but the one and only time Naruto had asked what the prize at the end was, he'd gotten 2 blank looks back. He just decided to leave them to it. It made Guy happy at the very least. He nodded at the Chunin guards as he passed them into the building. The shinobi population have always been a bit more dismissive than outright hostile, with some exceptions. Something had changed since he'd graduated the academy though. Instead of the demon brat or little shit or any of the names he had been bestowed over the years, they all just referred to him as Guy's student. That was a huge improvement in his book. He took a moment to knock on the Hokage store, entering before they had a chance to answer. This was it, he knew it. This was going to be the moment when they would tell him he was going to the Chunin exams. He was so ready. Hiruzen watched Naruto enter and walk up to stand in front of his desk. He really had grown so much since his assignment to Guy. He had grown at least 5 to 6 inches in height, and Hiruzen could see him being as tall as Minato one day. Even if he still only barely reached Guy's chest. His blonde hair had been cut short on the sides of his head but kept slightly longer on top. He did recall the boy talking about length bothering him the last time he was in for a mission. He had kept the black trousers, sandals and bandages keeping them tied at the bottom on his legs. But his orange sleeveless hoodie had been wrecked on one of his patrols. It was too much to hope the genin would give up on orange altogether. He wore a bright orange t-shirt instead, with a black sleeveless hoodie over it. Bracers covered his forearms and reinforced fingerless gloves already looked worn with use. He had heard of Naruto's tendency to destroy wooden posts in training exercises. The Uzumaki spiral was displayed prominently between his shoulder blades, hidden beneath the sword strapped across his back. Blue eyes looked determined back at him. Hiruzen didn't know if it was easy or difficult to remember the boy was still only 11. On one hand, he was by far one of the most capable genin in the village. On the other, he still had a habit of pranking people. The threat of deer ranks had deterred the genin, but not enough to stop him entirely. It was curbed enough to protect him from more serious repercussions at the very least. Naruto-kun. It is nice to see you. Hi. Jiji, the genin said, and Hiruzen could see the expectation in his blue eyes. He knew exactly what Naruto was expecting from this meeting and he sighed. It was time to let him down gently. Naruto-kun. You will not be attending the Chunin exams this year either. Naruto's grin fell off his face and Hiruzen could sense him clam up. Why? He asked shortly. The exams are being held in IWA this year, Hiruzen replied gravely. I do not think I need to tell you why you should not be attending these exams. No one from Konoha will be going. I am sorry. But you will need to wait until next year. He could see Naruto's fists clench, but it could not be helped. You know, Jiji, you have never actually told me why I cannot go to IWA specifically. Is there some special reason? Hiruzen shot the boy a sharp look. He understood he was frustrated that he could not earn a promotion for another year, but he was treading into territory best left alone. He knew that Naruto knew who his parents were, but he also knew the boy would keep it to himself. It was a better kept secret than that of the Kyuubi, and Hiruzen had every intention of keeping it that way. Konoha, and IWA for that matter, were not ready to learn that Yellow Flash had a son. He hadn't wanted Naruto to know until he was ready, but the genin had figured it out at some point. That is enough. Naruto, he scolded. That is not why I brought you here today. He took a deep breath and looked at Guy. The Jounin strangely silent during their exchange. The new class graduate next week, and I wanted to ask you if you would take on a team. Guy grinned widely at him. Hokage-sama. I already have one wonderfully youthful genin, he gestured dramatically to still sulking Naruto. I could not possibly part with him before his journey as a genin reaches its conclusion and my student flourishes in the springtime of his youth. I am not asking you to end your apprenticeship, Hiruzen reassured. Naruto will remain your apprentice until he passes the Chunin exams. You would be taking on a team alongside him. I didn't think that was allowed, Naruto spoke up. Narrowed eyes boring into Hiruzen. Under normal circumstance. It would not, Hiruzen nodded. Leaning back into his chair. However. You are very advanced for your age and rank. Naruto. You can undertake your patrols and seer ranks alone and I have every confidence in you as an individual operative. You will not leave the village unaccompanied but you can operate within the village limits independently. You will still train with Guy but perhaps not to the same extent. So basically I'm a Chunin without the actual rank. Hiruzen ignored that to speak directly to Guy. I have seen how successful you have been with Naruto and I feel that there are other students in the village that would benefit from your tutelage. Naruto is ready to become a Chunin and while it is unfortunate that cannot happen yet, that does not mean that other genin should lose out on a good teacher. The Jounin turned to Naruto. I will leave it up to you. Naruto-kun. Guy sent thumbs up to his genin. You are my student. First and foremost. You are my priority. Hiruzen watched Naruto finally melt from the sulky stance he'd taken up since being told about the Chunin exams. The genin was still resistant to teamwork and reportedly a bit standoffish on missions but Hiruzen didn't doubt that he cared about Guy a great deal. On any given day. If someone wanted Naruto to do something Guy needed to be the one to ask. I think you should take another team. Guy-sensei, Naruto finally admitted. You are the best teacher in Konoha. I think you would like more students. More people to spread the youth to. Hiruzen watched the tears well up in Guy's eyes and promptly decided he did not want to deal with what was about to occur. Thank you. I will put your name down. Guy, he said quickly. You may both go. Guy grabbed Naruto and pulled him into a bear hug. Tears streaming down his face and mumbling about youth. He walked out of the office with the genin still firmly trapped in his arms. Hiruzen caught sight of Naruto's look of regret just as the door shut behind them. Naruto flopped down onto the grass of the training ground. Dumping his swords beside him as he let out a dramatic groan. He thought he would never escape. He was pretty sure the Jounin had bruised some ribs though they had probably healed by now so he couldn't prove it. He made a mental note to never mention youth within earshot of Guy ever again. It was not worth it. He didn't care how happy it made the man. Never again. What are you whining about now? Sasuke's stupid face appeared above him. Smirking down at him in a way that Naruto was far too familiar with by now. Guess who isn't going to the Chunin exams this year? He grumbled back. Sitting up as Sasuke sat himself down beside him. At this rate we're going to be taking them at the same time, Sasuke sniped and Naruto sent an unimpressed glare his way. They say why? It's in IWA this year, Naruto rolled his eyes. Apparently they still have a bunch of murderous feelings about us left over from the Third War. I personally think it would be an even better test for who makes Chunin but stupid Jiji said no one's going. So you're stuck doing the same genin shit another year. Yup. HN. What is HN supposed to mean? HN. Gods. I fucking hate you sometimes. Sasuke shoved him over and Naruto let himself fall. Staring up at the passing clouds. He and Sasuke had kept to their arrangement that they'd made over a year ago now. They met up once a week to train and for Naruto receive his groceries. He would never admit it out loud but he had sort of come to maybe not hate these meet ups with Sasuke. The Uchiha gave as good as he got. He also didn't slow Naruto down, he actually picked up techniques stupidly fast. It was very annoying. He had miraculously managed to stop Guy and Kakashi from finding out too. It had been tricky. Especially in the beginning. But he had settled into a routine with it. He knew it wasn't as big a deal as he was making it out to be but after this long it had become a point of pride. Guy would have been thrilled but Kakashi wouldn't shut up about it if he knew. It was just easier for no one to know. Sasuke was even more eager than him to keep it secret. The great Uchiha could not be found to be training with a mere genin after all, least of all the village pariah. Saying that, they'd found themselves training outside of the agreed weekly schedule. There was an unspoken rule that neither of them could acknowledge that they were hanging outside of the designated training times and Naruto was not about to lose that game. It would ruin what they had going for them, a half-decent training partner that they could be an ass to without any real backlash. Naruto didn't want to give that up. This didn't mean they were friends, Sasuke was just slightly more tolerable than other people his age. So are you just going to mope or are we going to do something today? Naruto sighed heavily. Maybe I will just mope, he sniped back, putting his hands behind his head in a show of getting comfortable. It's hard work being a shinobi. You academy students wouldn't understand. He closed his eyes, waiting for Sasuke to make his move. He heard the other boy move away in silence, but Naruto didn't dare open an eye. He could not show weakness. It wasn't until he felt the warmth over his skin that he realized what Sasuke was doing. What the fuck? You fucking asshole. Why are you shooting your Katon techniques at me? Sasuke replied with a smirk, knowing that he'd won this round. Oh. You asked for it, Naruto snarled, drawing his swords and stalking towards the Uchiha. If Sasuke wanted to train, Naruto would train. If the Uchiha got slightly maimed, then that was his problem. He started it. Naruto was not having fun. He was not. Naruto reluctantly dragged his feet to the academy building. He had no idea why this was classified as a C rank, he personally called bullshit. He didn't see how hauling all the supplies for the graduation exam next week to the building warranted the rank. He secretly thought that Gigi was doing it to punish him for something, but he couldn't think of anything he'd done lately. It's you. Naruto groaned. It was never a good thing when people recognized him. He walked a bit quicker, hoping they would just give up. It worked on the drunk ones. Wait. Please. Naruto tightened his grip on the new target boards. This is why he stuck to the rooftops. No one bothered him on the rooftops. He turned slowly to see a tall boy bouncing towards him, smiling. That was ominous. I have been trying to find you, the boy beamed as he stopped into front of Naruto. He was tall, with round, dark eyes and black hair tied back in a braid. Something nudged at the back of Naruto's mind, but he ignored it. Look. Whatever you think I did. I didn't, Naruto rolled his eyes. So you are just going to have to get over whatever it is and leave me alone. No. I wanted to thank you, the boy insisted, his large round eyes far more earnest than Naruto was comfortable with. Thank me for what? Naruto placed the boards on his hip, confused. He didn't remember this guy. You are the one who inspired me to work my hardest for the exam. The boy's eyes sparkled and he leaned forward. Naruto leaned away. I have done nothing but work on my taijutsu since we last met, and I have every confidence I am going to pass the exam this week. I owe it all to you. Naruto racked his brain. When had he done that? He didn't even like talking to people his age. Never mind inspiring anyone. The only person he even spoke to was Sasuke, and there was nothing inspiring about that. He was more likely to call the other boy an ass and call it a day. What? He couldn't help but ask. The boy's smile dimmed a bit. You don't remember me? Naruto squinted at him. Had he met this guy before? He was pretty sure he would remember someone with eyebrows like that. They looked just like guys. The academy student looked back him with disappointment and Naruto frowned. He was more than familiar with that expression. He didn't think it was fair that he didn't know what he'd done to cause it though. No, he said shortly, raising an eyebrow. The boy shook his head, forcing a smile back onto his face. No matter. I did not introduce myself the last we met. The fault is mine. The boy bowed low. I am Rock Lee. I cannot use chakra, and so I feared I would fail the final exam. But I met you and you told me to stop limiting myself and to try my best regardless of my situation. That was me holding myself back, not my lack of chakra. Naruto blinked. That didn't sound like something he would say. That sounded more like guy. Cool. Good for you, Naruto heft the target boards into a firmer grip. Sounds like I gave some good advice. Now if you're done. I've got to get this done, so, bye. Naruto turned and waved a hand to the boy behind him. That was weird. He was definitely sure he would never say something like Lee was describing. Maybe the academy student had confused him for someone else? But that didn't make much sense considering he didn't look like anyone in the village. The bright blonde hair, the whisker marks on his cheeks and the orange usually gave him away. He stopped and sighed. This was Guy's bad influence. He knew it was. Hey. If you're serious about taijutsu you should lose the braid. It's a massive weakness, anyone could grab it and use it against you, he called behind him. He didn't turn to look. Cursing Guy in his head. He would never have said that before he was apprenticed to Guy. He had been more than happy keeping to himself. Avoiding people and telling them to go fuck themselves. His teacher was a terrible influence. He made a mental note to avoid this Rock Lee in the future, he didn't need the hassle. Genma downed the cup of coffee the minute it was placed on the table in front of him. He hated night shift. He hated the adjustment back to daytime hours even more. Radu had kicked him out of the flat, stating that the fresh air would do him some good. Genma knew that was code for you are being insufferable and I need a break from you. He couldn't hold it against the older man, he was insufferable after night shift. Ebisu sat stiffly across from him, eyeing him with disapproval. You are a shinobi of Konoha. Genma. Have some sense of decorum. Genma just groaned, dropping his head onto the table. He should have just cancelled, he didn't know if he had the energy of meeting up with his old genin team today. Guy was due any moment and he already had a headache building up behind his eyes. Maybe he should pull a Kakashi and just find a tree somewhere. It had just taken ages to get the two back on speaking terms. Ebisu was stubborn in his dislike of Naruto and Guy wouldn't hear of anything negative about his student. It had made for a stressful few months for Genma who had to mediate between the pair. Choza-sensei had refused to get involved, stating that his involvement in their team drama ended when they became Genins. Genma thought the man was being a coward but he couldn't blame the clan head, Guy could be scary when he wasn't his normal happy self. My fellow team. What a most wonderful morning. Genma groaned louder, failing in his attempt to sink into the wooden table. He loved the guy. He really did after knowing him for so long. But he was so tired. He'd never seen Guy tired, he wouldn't understand the pain of the normal folk. You are usually the first to arrive. Guy, Ebisu raised an eyebrow. Ah. Yes. Guy boomed, his laughter carrying all the way down the street. My beloved student mastered a most challenging kata in his kenjutsu today. He is a most wondrous example of youth and I shall strive to keep up with his shining example. Ebisu's face soured and Genma kicked him beneath the table. He did not make that much of an effort for Ebisu to screw this up. The man should be able to keep his mouth shut at least for a little while. He didn't even get his problem with Naruto, Genma thought the kid was pretty good. He had never really cared about the whole Kyuubi thing. He trusted Minato-sama's work and he knew most jounin his age did too. The kid was a bit grumpy and crass. But he cared about Guy. That was enough for Genma. That's great Guy, Genma yawned. Hey. Can you get me? Like 3 more coffees. That much caffeine is terrible for you. Guy turned to dramatically point at him. Your vitality and youth is enough to keep your spirits up. Genma just stared at him for a long moment. That's just you. Guy-sensei. The 3 of them turned in unison towards the voice. Naruto stood nearby, arms crossed with a playful smirk on his face. It looked identical to Kushina's, now that was a bit of a wake-up call. He'd grown a few inches since Genma had last seen him. He's shaved the sides of his head and added a couple of swords to his back. He looked good. Stronger. Less angry than when he'd barged into the Jounin standby station. He saw Ebisu's shoulders rise in irritation and cut in before the uptight man could say something stupid. Thank the gods someone said it, he grinned at the genin. I think Guy is the only one who doesn't appreciate the miracle of caffeine. Naruto looked back at him warily but he lacked the outright hostility from before. Guy had really made a big difference with him. Genma was glad to see it. Konoha hadn't been there for the kid. But he hoped the genin was starting to see that they weren't against him. The Jounin and Chunin weren't anyway. Yeah. But can you imagine Guy on caffeine? Naruto pointed out and Genma felt a level of horror he'd only experienced during the war. Guy. Promise me you will never drink coffee, Genma shot up from his seat and grabbed Guy's shoulders, shaking him dramatically. Guy. You have to promise me. Promise. Guy just laughed boisterously and Genma felt his panic start to rise even higher. That wasn't an answer, that wasn't an answer. Anyway. Guy-sensei, I just came to say I can't make the training tonight, Naruto shrugged. As if he hasn't just suggested an idea that will haunt Genma's dreams at least for the next month. They have me setting up the shit for the academy exams tomorrow. I have tried to get out of it but Gigi ain't budging. That is excellent. Naruto-kun, Guy threw an enthusiastic thumbs up at his genin. You will be aiding in the blooming of the next generation's springtime of youth. That's one way to put it, Naruto huffed. Rolling his eyes. I would call it the dumbest task ever. I'll see you at lunchtime tomorrow at the usual training ground. Tell Kakashi to bring some better jutsu than last time. Naruto turned and started walking down the street, waving lazily over his shoulder. Genmo let go of Guy, slowly sitting back onto the bench. Well, at least he was awake now. Well, that's the end. Please check out my other series and come back next time.